Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 3, or episode 3, if you will, of the Slow Learner podcast. This is the first episode where all three of us are together and I get to do less editing. However, there's a little wonkiness with the sound that we do sort next week, but, we're getting there. That's why we're the slow learner, okay? We're not going to get it all right away. This is a great episode. It really is. I think that a lot of the things I wanted to came together this episode, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. We covered so many interesting topics. We went through addiction, bilingualism, Mandarin stand-up, Irish Catholicism, male ego, dopamine, social bonding, hot comedians, unattractive comedians with hot partners, comedy in bed, the science of infatuation, implicit bias, Karl Popper's falsibility theorem pops up, the neuroscience of learning, memory recovery, euthanasia in Canada, cultural psychology, gender dynamics and humor, placebo effects, and ivermectin conspiracies. Oh, and saunas in Russia. So somewhere in there, we actually do go deeply into the neuroscience, like adult language acquisition, humor as a social signal, how our brains process attraction and bias. It's got a lot. And I swear we could have kept talking for hours because Des Bishop, who is our guest this week, just a brilliant guy, an amazing and interesting life, natural polyglot, speaks, Chinese, Gaelic, does comedy. You've probably seen his clips around the internet, and he's just such a joy to talk to. And of course, we've got our amazing neuroscience expert, Dr. Paul Wissel, who's with us, and he's with us on at the same time this week. So this whole episode, I'm really happy with. And as a special bonus, I actually am going to have some really good links and notes in the note section of this podcast that you can actually follow up. If any of these topics interest you, I've included notes to them. So you can go, oh, hey, I want to know more about that. Boop, boop, boop. Click it away. You can either find it there or you can go to the website, theslowlearner.com. Also, a work in progress. And of course, we'd love to hear from you too. So any feedback, if you're listening to the show, we'd love to hear from you. The link's on the website. Share this with your friends. If you like this episode as much as I do, please give us some feedback on, iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're giving a thumbs up, a couple stars. That's what gets us going, and it's word of mouth that makes this sort of work. So I'd really appreciate your support. But without any further ado, let's get into this episode. It's a banger. So here we go. Episode 3 with Des Bishop on The Slow Learner.
This is so exciting for me because every time I'm on a pod, and comedians love thinking that they know things, and I always wish I'm on with somebody that actually knows things.
Oh, wow. That's a weird statement right there. Like, so tell me the names of the people that don't know things first.
No, but you know what I mean? Like we all know a bit, but I always have to Google something, or I always wish that I had somebody with expertise. So I'm very happy
I have a little bit though, strangely. Most of my expertise is slightly outside this, but I am familiar with psych in general. Do you think that's funny though? Because a lot of the podcasts are being led by comedians. I was saying this to Pete, like a lot of culture ones are ex-comedians or,
Yes.
people who apparently still are. And I think whenever you're successful, you do the first few episodes and it's about stuff you know. But if you're too successful, you keep talking, and eventually, because they have to keep covering topics, they have no idea what they're doing by episode 6 or 7. But some of them are still famous for like years. It's crazy.
Amen. And this is at the core of our cultural rot.
There's so much drift or lane drift. I feel like, I'm going to bring up somebody controversial, but I'm not going to make an opinion on them. But like a Jordan Peterson, right? He started off talking about like that narrow section of expertise. And he was pretty good at that little narrow section, but boy, did that domain just expand into every other area. And but he's still, as somebody that should know reflectively that our assessment of our own qualities in domains that we haven't studied are generally overestimates. I mean, given,
that's like the first thing psych tells you is you overestimate your own intelligence, you overestimate your own expertise, whether it's on a date, job interview, or just pretty much anything, right?
I need one of those bullshit alarms. If I'm talking nonsense, I need an alarm to go off.
that did sound like very opportune. Because what happened? Oh, I'm so sorry. What happened was when I was trying to fix the mic, I turned on my other computer to try and troubleshoot. I just forgot to turn it off. But the Jordan Peterson one is always funny to me because everyone asks me about him. It's like, oh, did you know him? What was he like? And I got to tell you, I know absolutely nothing about him because literally the day I started was like right after, excuse me, he left. So I've never walked past him. And the closest I've come to contact with Jordan Peterson is my office stored his supplies. So that was like, I came in there, there's like family pictures and all these other things, whatever. But
Just
that was the
full of
closest I got. Yeah.
just all
But
beef jerky.
yeah, but it is interesting because if it were just about clinical psych and helping people, like a lot of people say he's done a lot for them, but it's like all the other things that bring about the problems. Like there's a commentary on Frozen for a bit, and I'm like, I'm not sure what that has to do with clinical psych, but sure.
Frozen the musical?
Yeah. The thing for kids or whatever. I say for kids, but I did watch it for someone I loved. So,
Is
but
it
yeah,
like
yeah, he weighs in on a lot of the stories. Like he has an interest in meth. Anyways, it was kind of like when you're weighing in on too many things, like you're gonna start making mistakes because you're never gonna be an expert in everything, right? Like I like sports, for example, but if I got into a discussion with like a GM, I'd humiliate myself because I didn't know enough about them. But yeah.
Well,
And
this is
he's
the thing. This is the issue is that there is no repercussions for stepping outside of your lane. In fact, there is only reward, especially if you give the people what they want. And that's
Yeah.
the thing is the hubris syndrome kicks in, and you realize, wow, if people think that I'm smart, I can say whatever, and they'll just eat it up.
Yeah.
we had this bit of an argument on our walk actually, because I kind of have a little bit of pushback against this. Because do
Okay.
we act like the way society says, hey, there's no repercussions for just flooding the world with BS, or do we act to the ideal that we aspire for instead of the one that has the least sort of retributional sort of public outcry of that guy knows nothing about that, why is he talking about it?
Yeah, because it seems like you can talk about what's punished and what's rewarded, right? Okay, and you can have a conversation about that. But what we should do, like very often doing good things isn't fun. It isn't rewarding. There's no benefit to very often correcting yourself. It's not like you get trust back a lot of the time. For scientific institutions, it's actually quite a bit different because there you have to correct yourself. That's like the whole thing. But in every other cultural forum, it's like if you admit you're wrong once and you're caught being wrong, that could be like, beginning of the end or the start of controversy for you that follows you everywhere. So I'm perhaps less surprised why people don't do it. I mean, my problem is I admit I'm wrong too much. I'm actually very good at being wrong. So
Yeah, but I feel like that's
yeah.
why scientific institutions are currently at a severe disadvantage. They're at a disadvantage because they actually have to prove that they're right. They have to admit when they're wrong to further their project. But the misinformation is already spread so deep that by the time
Yeah.
they get to the truth,
Des, you've just illustrated a huge philosophical problem brought up by Karl Popper. And I hate to be that guy, but you can never prove you're right. You can only prove that the idea that's wrong isn't right.
Oh my God.
Okay? That's the whole basis of science, is the falsification of hypothesis.
All
You can
we can
never be
do,
fully
yeah.
sure that the correct thing is correct, but you can absolutely be sure that the thing that is wrong is wrong.
So I think science has, it's a noble pursuit. Obviously, I'm a big fan, but it really has its job cut out for it because it always is delivering bad news or no news at all. It's like, oh, this thing we spent $1 billion researching, we can't cure it. Thanks, scientists. Or alternatively, it's like, oh, we were wrong. That's not the cause of, Alzheimer's or autism spectrum disorder or whatever. But by then, yeah, I agree. It's embedded in the culture, and it can take generations for such things to flip if indeed they do.
Yeah, this is the
It's tough to do it right.
This is the best time ever to be a mouse, because you hear about breakthroughs in mouse Alzheimer's and mouse cancer. And if you're a mouse, you're so hopeful right now. Like,
mouse optimism,
yeah, heart
we need
disease
some
in
of
mice
that,
is solved.
Yeah. Well,
or
there's
if you're ivermectin,
Yeah.
you're killing them.
Oh God.
I've had no worms since I started taking that stuff. It is incredible.
Are you taking it ironically or genuine interest here?
No, it's supposed to be used for worms. That's the actual.
but the
use
good-
for
It
it.
came up again. Yeah, this was the big thing. Like, doesn't
Yeah,
it
Mel
cure
Gibson.
something else now? Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I will give to Mel Gibson is that he did help me to learn that actually there is a little bit of positivity in the cancer community, that ivermectin may, through more research, have some positive benefits for tumor reduction. But like all these things, the problem is that these people just love being like, I have a magical cure. And he gave the three friends. He said, I have 3 friends that were cured from ivermectin and some other drug. And hopefully we will find some benefits of that, but there's the over-promising.
See, this is one of the things that university rips out of you, unfortunately, is when you start learning to read scientific papers for how you're supposed to read them, it changes those sorts of optimistic, sort of deductive sort of generalizations. And it takes so much away from that optimism, other than filling the small gap that they were aiming to in the research, because you can't generalize the success of a lot of things to a specific outcome. You can only sort of go, we've identified these sort of factors and we've canceled out this one, so we know it's not this. So that's the stepping process of building a great deal of knowledge over time through science. So when you can't really say ivermectin is that reason. If you took a drug and you gave it to 15 people and everybody seemed to have gotten better, you don't know that drug works, because you haven't controlled for the other effects. You haven't controlled for the situation. You haven't controlled for the different types of sort of psychological. What's that called again? The
expectations.
Placebo,
is that what you're talking? Yeah.
Placebo and nocebo and interpretive self.
I think the goal is, like science at its best, is anything could be possible, but be critical that anything could be possible. So if someone says something like, oh, this drug could work, it's like, okay, let's look at what's available. And also you have to admit uncertainty. It's like, okay, we're exploring that. The problem is, like, those magical cures are just so darn attractive. It's like, it's such a better story. It's not only simpler, it fills you with positivity. It's like, oh, there's hope for me. So it's hard to work against that and say, let's wait, let's look for evidence, let's do 15 years of studies, and then maybe we'll know.
It also fits very conveniently into the great conspiracy theory that all the drug companies just want people to be on chemotherapy, and that they're actually in the business of not wanting to cure cancer, which particularly when it comes to ivermectin, because ivermectin for some reason is very popular amongst the conspiracy theories, but they always say that Big Pharma is trying to shut it down, even though it is actually owned by Merck, who is literally their enemy, and so many of their other tales.
It's
but
just
somehow,
another drug,
somehow they're keeping ivermectin down in this particular tale.
I find all of that stuff eventually comes back to some billionaire that's going to make money in a different way. So I do believe in the conspiracy theories, but I don't believe that they're what the conspiracy theory people think they are. I think it's all the big conspiracy theory is greed, but it's like TikTok. Like, I know TikTok's not good. I know that they're ripping off our data. I know that they control their feeds, but so does the local ones. And I'm starting to think, oh, maybe this is all about a local domestic repurchase of it by, Elon Musk to add to his sort of bouquet of social media outlets that he wants to use to, I don't know. That could be complete bullshit, but it seems like maybe there's something there.
The key thing for conspiracy theory is I will listen to it as long as it's at least funny. Like, it has to be hilarious. I'm like, okay, I'm on board. That's probably impossible, but keep going. I'm loving this. But yeah, a lot of that, like the thing around vaccines originally, like the original study, to my understanding, was misunderstood, because it wasn't like the Wakefield one. It wasn't like entirely anti-vaccine. It was like, don't use this vaccine, use this other one, which he was
invested in.
I think that was the thing. Yeah.
It's also the wrong type of mercury. Like, mercury is just like alcohol.
You're familiar with types of mercury. That's awesome.
Well, we do. All of our chemical compounds have different sort of effects. Like, you look at ethanol versus methanol. So you've got one that's absolutely toxic, and then ethanol, which isn't toxic particularly. And then, so if you have methanol or wood alcohol, you get very sick. You get thick. But it sounds the same if you hear about it, like, oh, alcohol is an antifreeze, so I can drink alcohol. And this is the same thing with different sort of compounds of mercury. One's completely innocuous when it's in a substrate, and one is quite dangerous.
The difference between
the two.
The elemental form and the other forms. And I think I think one of the other issues was, when you change the formulation, it's not only expensive, requires reproduction, I think some of the cases it doesn't keep as well, or it's hard to transport or something like that. So other things happen. But yeah. It's not understanding these things at a deep level. Yeah.
But it all comes down to male ego, doesn't it? Like,
It's so funny. You took the word. That was literally the next sentence that I was going to say.
Well, okay,
it's true.
I'm on this train with you. Help me out.
As we get older as men, our whole sense of self is, in our productivity and our ability to sort of be of service. Like, we define ourselves with our jobs, with what we can produce, what kind of money we make. That's the whole structure of modern masculinity. And if we can't provide something, we feel useless. So these people, as they're getting older, feel less sort of, including myself and you guys particularly, you feel less valuable in society. So you start thinking you're a resource of knowledge, even if you don't have that knowledge, because it puts you in a position of value and it reaffirms that sort of productivity. And I think a lot of these people, as they get older, that are spouting bullshit, comes down to the fact that they feel impotent, they feel weak, and they feel powerless in this changing world of complexity. And them making a bold statement makes them feel like they belong again and not isolated and pushed out.
That breaks my heart a little. I feel out of touch because in my day, when I was young and you felt like that, just do online gaming. That's what it was for. You could, reassert your dominance in this minor real-time strategy game as opposed to.
Whereas I think go find a dominatrix. That's the way. So, okay, I'm the weird one. Okay,
No. I know a dominatrix, so we're good there. Yep.
But I think it's deep. I think it's deeper and more direct about the Andrew Wakefield thing, because he was proven wrong and he got ostracized by the community. Yeah. And I actually feel that if you look at the modern anti-vax movement, it all originates from him being butthurt. And his ego couldn't take it. And he has literally garnered up what was originally a small but effective cult and is now a huge percentage of the population that have gone for his anti-vax rhetoric, which all came from him being butthurt back in the 90s.
Well, where's the archetype for admitting you're wrong and accepting it and being humble? Like, that's such a weird.
Again, it's not a popular thing. Like, if a politician does that once, they're finished, and if a scientist does that once, I think it's pretty similar.
But that's the whole basis of
that's what you're supposed to do. But I think when you so there's advancement in science which is built on traits like this: look for the truth, make mistakes, correct yourself, and so on. But the visible scientists, the ones people know, I don't think have different, more complex personalities that involve social elements, because it's not just about the science, it's about projection of the ideals and persuasion and all these other things. But I was going to say, I do agree with you. This sort of took off the sentiment around Wakefield. There are scattered reports of anti-vaccine things for hundreds of years or whatever it was after they were discovered, but they really take off. And I think one of the biggest reasons why it's such a large community now is was attached to a political action that was perceived in a certain way. And that's when it went through the roof. It used to be this fringe thing we didn't vax our kids. Really? Is that kind of thing we don't use deodorant, we use crystals, that kind of thing. Okay, your life choice. But now it's like a whole sorting principle. People do or they don't. And no judgment either way, but I'm just saying it seemed to get so much worse last 5 years even.
Yeah, that's a good point, the no judgment thing, because I have friends that believe crazy stuff, and they're still my friends. I don't cut them off, because I think it's not helpful to cut people off, because then they're exposed to no contrary information. And the weird pressure that you get from others to cut off people that are nuts, I find that really kind of bothersome too. So you got the people trying to do good causing bad, and the people causing bad. But if you don't have any connection between them, the more isolated they are, the worse it is for everyone.
Yeah, to that note, gonna say the most obvious thing ever. It's not like any of this social commentary I'm giving is new, but here goes. There's Twitter and Blue Sky or whatever. Something particularly notable in my community is a mass exodus of many scientists from one, that is Twitter, with many of them going over to Blue Sky instead and just never coming back. And a couple of the one states specifically said more or less exactly what you did. It's isn't it our job to be here to speak to other people and maintain the lines of communication? Because if you're just posting for other people who are already on your side, why post at all? There's that argument there. If your goal is to get information out, they already got it. It's the other people who might benefit from the conversation.
That's why I kind of like when people like Bernie Sanders and different folks go on like Rogan and Fox and stuff like that. They should. because where else are they going to get exposed to the different perspectives and stuff like that? Anyways, you know that this show's supposed to be more about how Des pulls in pussy.
I'm married now. I'm married now.
Come from. We're having a nice conversation about conspiracy
the
theories and
neuroscience
political.
of Des pulling in pussy was the
conflict.
topic that we workshopped.
Well,
And
it's
now-
comedy. Yeah, we need to put the intellect behind our silly humor.
Exactly.
I can contribute a researcher's view to this with different language, of course. My God.
Well, first of all, let's talk to Des a little
Shaking
bit
the
here.
room with laughter. Yeah.
I've got a couple of things I just want to sort of bring up. First of all, Des, for those of you that don't know Des, he's a comedian who started out in the U.S., went to Ireland, and now is back in the U.S. and just a fantastic amount of viral bits online right now. Oh my God. What's weird is I've been shared your bits by friends of mine now, like probably 7 times, like, Pete, you got to know this guy. I'm like, and I don't want to like drop the ball. Like, let me tell you.
Let me tell you about this guy.
But
Hey, small correction.
no,
I'm originally from New York, but comedically I began in Ireland because I went to Ireland as a teenager for education. So comedically, I began in Ireland and now I'm doing more stuff in the States.
did your parents, for education, do you mean like a Catholic school?
I went to boarding school in Ireland when I was 14.
Catholic boarding school?
Yeah, I'm entirely educated in Catholic institutions. Wow. My entire life.
Wow.
Survivor. Survivor, some people call us. Never Jesuit.
Or
The
Dominican?
Jesuit is for the peak. You know,
Okay. So it wasn't okay.
No, I went to a school that was similar to like a Jesuit school for 1 year, but no. Anyway, no Jesuits, but same thing.
Oh, okay, cool.
Honestly, I would prefer the Jesuits. They probably, if you were to do the research, they've probably had the least amount of scandal. The Jesuits.
Well, yeah. Well, they're the most scientifically aligned of all of
That
them.
would be the most, I think, like incendiary study to do. Which religion is the most problematic? There's no winning, way to come out of that. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, I can tell you this, which is an absolute fact. This is an uncontroversial fact. So I went to a Catholic school in New York, high school-wise, Catholic school in high school for 1 year in New York, and I flunked out. And then I went to Ireland for 3 years to St. Peter's, and then 1 year in a place called Blackrock College. They call some of the boarding schools in Ireland colleges, but it was still high school. Those 3 high schools and my grammar school in America, St. Kevin's, all 4 of those Catholic institutions have had sexual abuse scandals. Not one has not. Every single one.
It's amazing how many have had that. I'm also, as you've probably guessed, I was raised Catholic, but I didn't go to a Catholic school. I had to go after school to Catholic
Oh, yeah. I
education,
remember those
catechism,
kids.
which is the worst. But my parish priest, and this, I don't know if I like this or not, but oh yeah, that's my dog. Hold on. Hey,
doesn't
hey.
want any chats about
Shush.
clerical abuse.
He's very pro-Catholicism.
Beth, get over
JD
here.
Vance.
Come on.
JD.
Come here.
JD.
Get over here. Get over here, Grumpy. Come on. Come here. Come on. Hey,
Very unprofessional host.
right now. I'm sorry about that. My dog is a handful. Come here, Beth. Get over here. Get over here right now. Yeah, you do.
Well, you didn't teach your dog to be quiet during a podcast.
I don't. I didn't.
that's
She's kind of dumb. But I went. My parish priest was fantastic. Didn't have any. It did have a sexual abuse scandal, but not the type you expect. Was found out he was sleeping with all the parish the wives.
The ladies, adults.
And I mean, if you're gonna pick a type of abuse,
Yeah,
that's the one.
it's not even abuse.
God.
It's a scandal. It's not abuse.
Exactly.
So anyway, what's the theme?
My experiences with religion were very different.
Wow.
We were Lutheran, for us it was like a weekend thing. And actually, in contrast, like it's a more somber. It's not as ceremonial for historical reasons, obviously. And just very, very different. Like if you go to like a Catholic religious event, there's like dress, there's like different songs, there's all these things. Lutheran's much less like that. And yeah, it was only a weekend thing for us, but it's funny because it seemed like such a thing at the time. There were a number of religious schools nearby. I don't know if that still happens in Canada as much. I'm assuming it's still a thing in the States. But yeah, I think the being from a religious family is a different thing than being at a religious school. I don't know which one would be the one you would take, but
Well,
I
I've
had
had both. I've had both.
oh, double dose.
My grandfather was Lutheran, converted to Catholicism. Yeah, there you go. So I got a little bit of both. Look at that. Look at that.
The OG.
I'm
protest.
an expert on both. Okay, so we got digressed from you going to Ireland on a correction.
Yeah, what's
there
the theme?
into a
What's the
huge
theme?
thing. I just want people to understand that you've got a worldly perspective, and you also
Right.
have a specific kind of talent, which is I've watched you hit on girls on every continent now successfully.
come on.
No, I know, but you're a charming individual. Charming as hell. And now you've gotten married recently, which is amazing and lovely to see. And I'm so happy for both of you because you both exude an incredible amount of charm and humor. And I love it when people like that find each other because I feel like it's a key that's always been trying to fit and then you freaking found it. And it's lovely.
And it's a core element of myself and Hannah's relationship because the immediate connection we made when she got into my car in July 11th of 2000, peak pandemic, we immediately started laughing together, like, within a minute. And I very quickly knew, before we drove like 15 minutes to Sag Harbor, I knew by the time we got there that, I don't think I knew I was going to marry her, but I was like, this is going to go somewhere. I knew, but the connection was laughter, actually.
Yeah, that's the same thing with my relationship as well. And then when I saw you kind of going through that, I was like, this is fantastic. Seeing you kind of find that sort of soulmate, because I think as comics, first of all, we need somebody that shares a sense of humor, especially one that's a little bit farther than the average person. Can sort of take a little bit more beating in the sort of the boundaries department of what's funny, but that sort of undercuts sort of like a thing that you don't hear discussed a lot by men. And I find that quite interesting. It seems like, and this could be something that's being told to us by society or something that we're just sort of not putting enough thought into, but it seems like we're very, we're like looks and, and nurturing and all these things. But sense of humor is so vital in maintaining the relationship over a long period of time, I find. And it's also a warning sign. When that sense of humor goes, I think that that's something that you need to pay attention to. And it makes me sort of think like that humor plays a massive role in from every part of sort of our initial relationship, our sort of getting to know, getting to become fond of, our sexual selection, and the maintenance of a partnership and the mediation of conflict over a long period of time. And subconsciously as comedians, I think we do interject comedy quite a bit. And I kind of want to know, how did you look prior to your relationship? Like, did you drop a joke when you met girls? How did you use it sort of over the arc of your sort of singleness to the point that you're in now? Is that a complicated question?
Well, no, it's just that I never consciously thought about using anything. I'm just
I know.
Being
because
myself.
we're comics and that's our sort of
that's our
but
lingua
I don't
franca.
even
mean it from the point of view of being a comic. I just mean I'm just being myself, and naturally, since my memory of interacting with humans, including my own family, it's always been jokey.
Okay, let me rephrase this so that I think it'll make it a little bit more clear what I'm saying. Do you ever watch somebody who's not funny? Who's attractive?
Trust me, I have suffered plenty of dead personalities for looks. Looks can really hide a personality for a pretty good amount of time.
Well, that's an interesting thing. That's the infatuation stage, right? That's is that an actual?
Well, yeah. Early on in most relationships, they do tend to be more physical, more passionate, and people who are good looking. This is like halo effect. This is again well recognized in psychology. You're more likely to think they're smart. There's even bizarre things like you'll give them a lighter criminal sentence. Like, I'm not joking. These are things people might do. So it definitely helps to be good looking. And unfortunately, time being what it is, you're not going to get that forever. But and the longer a relationship runs, the less critical that is and the more critical other things become. I totally agree with what you were saying about maintenance of a relationship. That is actually a major theory as to what humor is for. Like it's like a safety signal to let everyone know, okay, we're not, too screwed here. Everyone's laughing. We're not in danger. And as well, if you feel that you're tense with someone and you make a joke and they don't laugh, or if they don't make jokes anymore with you, that's like red flag number one that it's in trouble. You would look for that right away. So yeah, that's like one of like hundreds of reasons they think it's useful.
Wow.
Yeah.
That means there's a red flag every time I try to perform in Red Deer, because they do not find me funny at all.
Why would red deer be a problem? That's
just culturally,
we're not Medicine Hat, Moose Jaw, like all these places with fun names.
We're not interested in maintaining our relationship, me and Red Deer, at all.
Oh my God.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about the infatuation phase, because obviously I've had throughout my lifetime, I've had numerous infatuations, just an intensity at the beginning that is almost overwhelming. But it was so intense with Hannah that I actually Googled, like, what are the hormones of falling in love? Because I was so intensely overtaken with almost what seemed like severe anxiety.
Oxytocin, vasodefrin.
It all kind of added up, actually, in terms of it was almost unbearable, the intensity of emotion I was feeling at the beginning. Now, it was heightened by the fact that very soon after we met, she went into like a 7-week situation where we couldn't see each other. So it was heightened by that, but it was quite intense. So I actually did look up the infatuation phase from a scientific point of view to see if there was anything I could do to ease the fucking pain.
It's so funny. How can I be less in love? Most people, it's the opposite. This is too good. It hurts too much, please. And that's the other funny thing about it is, like, at the start, it is intense, and the short breaks, someone you're crazy about, feel like years. And it's like this teenage like excitement. It's like, I have to hear from them. I have to hear from them. Why haven't they responded? Like, it's great being there as an adult again. So wow, there's still things I can be that excited about. It's really nice.
I think the comedy lifestyle does extend that honeymoon period too, because I felt that with my partner too, because I was gone like months and months and back and months, and I did the same thing when I first met Courtney. Is I was like, we talked on the phone for a month without seeing each other, and I actually forgot what she looked like. And I remember her telling me she was half Asian. And I was like, I don't remember that at all.
That's such a big detail.
I didn't, because I couldn't remember what she looked like. It was just we were laughing and getting along so well, talking all the time. I know that doesn't happen anymore. Now I imagine it's just texting and different stuff.
That's like Love Is Blind.
Amazed me because for me, the conversation in the form of words, like we're doing now, way better than the texting form. Even though for me, like I had trouble getting started talking to people when I was younger. And so I first like had a chance to show what I was worth in writing. But after I could finally talk to people, I never wanted to go back to texting or email. It never compared to having them there and just going back and forth and verbally sparring or any of that. Like even that was fun. But yeah, that seems to be not how things are anymore. Like a lot of it's texting. And people are surprised when my phone rings, because that's not supposed to happen unless like someone's dead. Like that's the only reason you get a call now. Well, different culture. It's really crazy.
You pointed out something that I remember distinctly back in my time scales. If I liked a girl and they were suggesting where to go, I would never go to a place with loud music, because they needed to hear what I had to say.
Yeah,
for them to like.
But that's, I mean, that's just a fact, though. I mean, I know we're joking because you really like want to talk, but like a first date or even a 10th date in a loud place is kind of pointless, because at the end of the day, you're still trying to get to know each other. So,
but some people are so good looking and so coordinated that people can find them attractive just from dancing. That's never happened to me.
But that's different. If you want to go out dancing, I'm down with that. That's different.
Really? Oh yeah.
I like dancing.
I believe you. Yeah. The Irish are known for that.
I can see it. Yeah.
Do you guys put like 2 swords down when you go dance?
Anna and I do not go dancing now for numerous reasons. She's not big into dancing, and I can hardly walk. So these are two things that. No, it's all right. It's just a knee issue. But anyway, maintenance. Interesting. You're saying something about relationship maintenance.
Yeah.
Because Pete and I have been joking in the past, but you joked already on this podcast that you don't see each other that much as comedians. And I joke in my show that like when you tell people we're only together half the time, young people are like, oh, that must be hard, and older people are like, you guys are going to have a great marriage, which is like a joke, right? But I do think that there are there are pros and cons, but I think the pros outweigh the cons
Absolutely, yeah.
in terms of
I
absence
agree.
makes the heart grow fonder, all that stuff. Does that hold up in science?
In the short term, yeah, absences definitely help. But for like long-term relationships, that's sort of a mixed bag. There are other factors that are going to determine if a couple survives those. So if you take people like really in love and you separate them for a brief time, when they reconnect, it's way stronger. But in the long run, that shouldn't be required for day to day to be good. Would be and generally the idea is people who successful long-term relationships, they enjoy spending time with each other, though not 100%. So to clarify on that, like COVID, for example, was a big deal for many people because they went from 40% of the day together to 100, and many people had trouble with that adjustment. So to an extent, it's true, yes, particularly at the start of the relationship. But for the long-term ones, the hope is you do enjoy them enough to spend a lot of time with them, because that's for most people how it works.
That's a. There's also another sort of point of view in positive psychology about hedonic moderation. So there's so positive psychology is a study of sort of like it's not the study of addressing sort of dysfunction or abnormal psychology or problems. It's about enhancing our enjoyment of life. And there's two ways to measure our happiness in positive psychology. One's hedonic and the other is eudaimonic, and both taken from sort of an Aristotelian sort of perspective or Plato of, hedonic being pure pleasure and eudonic being sort of a satisfaction. And generally considered over a lifetime, eudonic is considered the more powerful sort of reflective, like, are you satisfied with your life? And when you ask people that, the hedonic sort of values sort of are short-term in the now, and the eudonic is over time. So one of the ways our brains work is we adapt to things. Our signal structure adapts to things, even pleasure. If you have pleasure constantly, it won't be as pleasurable anymore. So one of the theories by one of the leading positive psychologists is that we should sort of cycle our enjoyables, cycle it so that you only have a bit and a bit and a bit, sort of so that you delay that sort of adaptability it's called hedonic adaptation. And there's different ways of doing that. And there's like setting goals in the future and different ideas that moderate it.
I was going to say a lot of podcasters really love that idea. One of them, like, this is like, I think
it's another way of saying bullshit.
Sorry, not my intention. I'm a polite person. No. Okay, I'm going to wait for the laughter to die down, which might take a while.
Sorry.
No, because I wanted to just reference that other people are sort of onto this thing. Like, they'll be like, was it like, forget who was like Huberman's, like, or Friedman, they often comment on this. It's like, if you have sauce with your steak, take the sauce away, and then the steak will gradually taste better, and then the sauce will take better if you use it again, that sort of thing. Again, for many forms, that seems to be true. If you have a short break for something and then you get it back, it's better. I'm just saying that what is true for like food and for drink and those types of passions may not be as true for personal interactions. Like, again, they're designed such that you're going to be spending most of the time with the person from the get-go. So abstinence from somebody deliberately, I'm staying away from you on purpose to make this all better. It's also can be difficult to sell if it doesn't happen already. But I agree in those other forms. It's very strong evidence, I would say. With people, I'm more inclined for a nuanced view. So it works in some cases. I'm actually really glad it works for y'all, because for some people, that's like deal breaking to not see someone even like 2 weeks of the year. So I'm wondering what personalities make that possible and what don't. Like, what is it like for pilots, for example? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I think, and this is just anecdotal, based on my own experience and maybe a couple of other comics, it seems to work best when both partners, obviously kids complicated, so let's just exclude the kids part, right?
Yeah.
Let's exclude when...
I'll let my son know he's not in the equation.
Yeah, but what I mean is there are obviously issues around when you're shirking responsibilities and stuff like that, so that's like a separate complication. But I feel like for the couples that it works most for is when both of them have a good reason for needing their own time, like the type of own time which is he's away for 3 days, now I can get this done, or I need to be away too, or in the future I'm going to need him to not be annoyed because I'm going to need to go away.
Yeah.
So in Hannah and I's situation, and a few other people I know, probably Pete's, that's why it's like a positive.
Yeah, I think with people, especially with these very committed interests that they're very passionate about, and they have this private exploration of them, like it makes sense to do that on your own. Like a lot of career people, that tends to be the case. I agree with you for like kids. It's like that's like a deal breaker. If you have one or two, it's just like both people kind of have to be nearby. But yeah, personality wise, if you're the type to go on those kind of personal journeys with a hobby, that's very engrossing. That can take like weeks or months sometimes where you're kind of a bit out. Yeah, I can see that.
Pete?
I don't know. I think if Courtney had a choice, and I worry about this sometimes too, which is why she's not my power of attorney if I'm ever in the hospital. I think that
Strange thing to declare. Oh my
I
God.
think she would hobble me and keep me at home in like a wheelchair where I couldn't escape if she had the option.
Misery styles.
Oh yeah, absolutely, misery style obsession kind of thing. So yeah, if I'm ever in the hospital, she's not going to be the one deciding whether I keep living if I'm in brutal pain, because she will not let me die.
Right.
She
I didn't get
me
that.
alive in pain endlessly while I want to go.
That's so funny that you say that. This is how you know your relationship is doing well. If you're at a stage where you can like, what happens if I'm terribly injured and almost dead? That's a conversation you end up happening. We've had it too, actually. And I'm like, if I'm almost dead, just let me go. Kill me. Pull up the plug sort of thing. And she's like, no, you're staying forever, even if you can't talk. It was so dark. But it was from a place of love. And it seems like you're in a bit of a similar spot.
Well, yeah, but I
I
should
don't know
have.
if you've had that conversation yet.
I have.
It's something to look forward to.
Like I don't want a DNR. I don't want, especially after having all my ribs broken with like a CPR situation. That pain, not for me. I just let me go if it's my natural time. But at the same point, I have an incredibly low tolerance for pain, so that's also a problem. So I might want to go with like a knee injury, like Des. That could be me going like, you know what, this is enough. Pull the plug.
Bruise my toe. I'm not long for this world. My God.
I need somebody between me and my wife, sort of somebody that has sort of like an in between. You know,
I'm sure mild arthritis is not going to be on the euthanasia list of acceptable times to commit euthanasia.
Oh my God.
in Canada, that's actually a debate.
Well, yeah, they are debating a lot of the euthanasia stuff here.
Because Canada, unlike your country, you know, like where you gotta break the law to kill yourself. We have a completely different approach up here. Like, very liberal sort of perspective. But you know, I think that it needs to be decided by the people involved in it, and not us looking in, because that's a pain that they have to sort of deal with.
There's a lot of tough conversations.
And I brought it down.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I understand. I do believe it requires mild regulation, because there's obviously fraudulent activity that could benefit quite nicely from a neat euthanasia. So I understand why it shouldn't be the most simplest thing in the world. But
in your situation in the States, I definitely want to keep insurance companies out of that loop.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's time for you to go, and you to go, and you to go. We're off.
Okay,
we got to get back to the relationships, though. And I'm kind of curious about this one. I was thinking about this. Have you ever seen like the introduction? Like, have you ever noticed that being funny has changed a girl's opinion about you, or a partner, or a friend, or anybody completely to liking you immediately in a social situation?
I mean, I would think so. I don't have like specific examples. I think the better example is that a lot of very unattractive comics have very hot girlfriends. So
Why you got to bring Jeff Ross into this?
Oh my God. I was excited to get to the part where you give examples, that type of thing. Of course, Jeff Ross.
But I mean, humor is without doubt an aphrodisiac. So I do think, well, okay, so let me give it a better example is that the amount of female attention I have had throughout my career, even before, say, in Ireland, I quite well known or whatever, but even before that, the amount of female attention I got was insanely out of proportion with like the control the control des The Des that didn't do stand-up comedy did not get the attention that I got once I started doing stand-up comedy. So there is clearly something not just about being funny, obviously being on stage, but I do think that if you did a research, women say that like sense of humor is a big deal. And I think a lot of women have seen men on stage and suddenly been like, oh, I'm into him.
So what does that mean? So what is humor, Dr. Whistle?
What do I have to say? Yeah, so it is
specifically what are we showing? What are we communicating with an ability to sort of make another person, a random stranger, or anybody laugh? We're showing there's clearly we're showing we're not a threat to a certain degree, unless the joke's on them. But
I was going to say there are types of humor that are hostile and are like, I don't want to say dominance displays, but they literally use the term like aggressive or corrective. So like in social cases, it's like you're going to call somebody out and call an action out and make fun of it. That's not a nice thing to do, but it might be seen as positive. But to each of those points, first off, it is a very preferred trait. Like there's that big study I was mentioning earlier. They have like some 35 traits they were looking at, that neighborhood. And they ask people, what are you looking for in a partner? And then they'll ask people, what traits does your partner have? So because sometimes you're looking for something, you say you're looking for something, but you're looking for something different. It's like, why do I keep dating people who are kind of crazy? Well, that sort of thing. But anyways, so they do a list of the top 5, and it's things like, honesty and loyalty are like very, very high up there. But the surprise was like comedy is like out of the 35, I think it's like number 10 thereabouts, both what people say and what people want. So it's like top 10, it's there. Yeah. But above it is other things, like I said, like honesty, like loyalty. The funny one was, they comment on this in the paper, was like, I think number 1 is like being a good lover is number 1.
Really?
So yeah, like that's the number 1 thing people end up saying about,
their partner and the person they're attracted to? Because
no. So preferences is like, what you'll say you're looking for. Right. People won't admit or won't say they're looking for that, but later they'll say they have it when you have a partner.
So it's part of being a good lover is making somebody laugh during sex.
Well, yeah.
But that's not universal though, right? That's like different strokes for different folks,
I don't think so. This is anecdotal, but I think that there's
okay.
During intimacy, I've honest to God, and this, I don't know what this says about me, I've made people laugh harder in bed than probably anywhere. That sort of freedom of connection, that incredible sort of displacement of whatever fears that you're sort of holding on to or insecurities, and addressing them in a comedic way, or the sort of the rapidness of the love or the rapidness of the situation, laughing about the situation, the evolution, the weirdness of it all, de-stresses everything to such a comfortable level that it's been sort of a magical elixir that has come into play. Of course, there's passion and stuff like that, but it has to cycle through. It has to be like a thread in there,
It does seem there does seem to be some variation from person to person. Like some people, they want that kind of acceptance or that lightheartedness for all the other things to happen. And other people, that's like, I've heard stories where that's immediately disqualifying. I had this one friend, they were a Marine, and they said, if you were to laugh, it's done. And I was like, well, okay. Like, I don't even know how we got to that point in the conversation. But yeah, I think for some people it's a requisite and it's wonderful for them, at least in the intimacy part. But to finish answering the question in terms of what it signals, like besides being useful by itself in managing social situations, disarming people, dominance display, that type of thing, some people take it as a signal of intelligence, signal of creativity, signal of extroversion, or just a signal of interest, like I like you in a special way. Not necessarily even a sexual way, because we're funny with our friends for the same reason, but it can signal so much, like you're safe, I like you, I'm a smart person, I'm a creative, and so on. And these are the types of things people will think about creative people, some of which are borne out by studies afterwards. Like there's some scattered findings like creative people are a little more intelligent and so on, or I think it was like comedians, the successful ones, are more intelligent. I love that caveat. It's like, just this group, who knows about all of them as a community. And for that matter, how large is the unsuccessful comedian group? Because I think it's like everybody, tries at some point. But yeah.
I don't want to gatekeep. That's a
sorry,
big
go ahead,
group.
Pete.
No. I used to when I was younger, and I actually regret being such a gatekeeper to the term comedian because,
Really? Okay.
well, yeah, where I grew up in sort of in a type of comedic environment that doesn't exist anywhere anymore. But it was like you had to pass a certain level and you had to be approved by other people. And if you called yourself a comic and you weren't a comic, other comics would be like, they'd rain hell down on you for calling yourself that. But I don't think that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what I came up in. I had to kind of lose those traits because I don't think it's healthy to gatekeep people. But at the same point, some people will call themselves a comic that have really no business.
Yeah, pros and cons. The bit of gatekeeping sometimes is a positive. I have a kind of a two-part question, which is an indulgence on my behalf, because I've heard a lot of takes on this, but I've never had the intellectual take on it, which is a two-part question. One, do you think that women find comedians attractive when they see them on stage from the humor or just from the fact that they are getting all the attention? And then the second part of that, and there's no research on it, but it's a known fact that female comics do not get any of the benefits that male comics get in terms of attractiveness. In fact, they would probably argue that it's perceived as a negative. But I can just see from my own wife and loads of very attractive female comics that I know that their DMs do not light up with male suitors after the show being like, hey, you were funny, follow me. Whereas male comics do get a lot of that.
I had this note down because I wanted to address the whole idea of comedy from that perspective as sort of a sexual selective attractive device that on a broad spectrum. Why don't men say funny women more than the other qualities they mention, which as a whole, I can't imagine being somebody that wasn't funny. And I think it's really important. Yet there's these social connotations that part of funny is sort of the demanding of attention, which is sort of a leaning in masculine characteristic of social domination. But yeah, let's let the doc weigh in on this.
Yeah, my first take on this would be like, and this is a lot of the evolutionary psychology stuff, and I have to be very careful in explaining this. I don't accidentally want to start a firestorm. So these earlier studies are looking at
you need enough people. No. You need enough people to listen to this for that firestorm to happen.
Yeah, but this is different. Like,
pray for a firestorm.
Good for him, and it would be life-ending for me as well as morally egregious. But anyways, they look at differences in what's called like humor production, like trying to make jokes, and humor reception, and the statistics are saying exactly what the main stereotype is. Men are going to be doing more production, and they're going to be looking for someone who's more receptive, as in laughing at their jokes. Like that's something they do. Mind you, more notable in the West as a trait, like very Western, supposedly, versus Eastern. So this desire to be funny and have someone find you funny might be present in many places, seems to be more present in men, seems to be more present in the West. To the other part, though, and I agree with you, I find that actually deeply sad. There's definitely a differential treatment of comedians based on gender. It's like very striking. I think there's been a lot of progress made already on that. There hasn't been a lot of research into that. So I don't actually know the reason why, because it's only a recent thing to have this vast library of comedians of that type that we could respond to. So I don't think people know.
Right.
My hope is that changes. Yeah, it is interesting because I think if some of the jokes are seen as aggressive, for example, as they do tend to be, they may be perceived more negatively. Like this was an older analysis. I think even my mom was part of this study. I'm so sorry. I'm going to cite my mom, if that's okay. But at least she's the one who told me about it.
Also a professor and a doctor.
Yeah. That's true.
Very cool.
And wonderful, all those things, professorship, motherhood, also a great Scrabble player. But anyways, the argument she was making at the time is the same action could be differentially perceived. Like you could give the same speech and attribute it to a woman, for example, or even a comic performance, and people respond more negatively to it and use different words to describe it. So maybe what you're saying is there's an idea that certain things are masculine, which, that may be wrong. And that when other people do them, it's like, that's not correct, which I also disagree with. But not a lot of research because, again, I think it's a newer thing.
Well,
I think it's, yeah.
I think not a lot of research is sadly a blanket statement when it applies to pretty much everything that could have gender differentiations.
Oh, yeah,
Because men are overused in sampling of research, of study, and Western white men particularly high in testing of medication, testing of heart disease, study of disease. It all skews male. And unfortunately, the stand-up's probably not at the top of the list that they're researching. But I do think...
How funny to propose that. We got to do something about these stand-up research. What? But I hate to interject, but
no worries.
the line you're on is you're right. Actually, this was a big thing in biomedical science. So not only you mentioned earlier, it's like good news for mice. You know, we can cure anything in a mouse. It's not even we can cure anything in a mouse. Historically, it was a male mouse.
Right.
So, yeah. Overwhelmingly, they used the male animals for a variety of reasons. But this was particularly problematic, and this is where I'll make a strong argument. I know some people might get upset with this, but I think it's the case. If you're trying to understand a disorder more common in women and applying it to women, maybe use female animals. But that's, again, a recent epiphany people have had that they were wrong and they should have done that. So that's changing, and you're supposed to justify or comment on the use of these things.
And if I don't mind also pointing out, I'm sorry, but also white mice.
White mice. So it's the weird thing is it's white rats. It's white rats, and it's technically I can give you the rat strains. This will never come up again. But to your final point, though, as well, the comment about focus on Western samples. So I don't want to make it seem like this was part of a pathological and intentional ignorance. But a lot of the universities, being in the West, just sampled their students who were Western. And so overwhelmingly, the data reflects that. And while it may have some value in predicting their behavior, it's been acknowledged it's very bad at predicting people in certain cases. In other parts, this is the whole weird problem. There's even a book on it, I think, by one of the people who drew attention to it. I think it's Joseph Heinrich. But it's something actually that is very serious. This isn't something to be said for political points. It actually is a major issue. The data is actually not good if it doesn't include the other people that it's supposed to predict. But yeah, white mice. I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at that.
So in that concept too, though, with comedy, I think that it's sort of a dipstick, sort of a measure of the cultural sort of equity and social sort of trajectory and access to social sort of traversing that the genders have with each other. Because I noticed, like, at least in Northern Europe, in places like Sweden and Denmark, when I do comedy, that there was a much more equitable sort of representation in this sort of involvement, at least socially, of like seeing women as funny. Whereas I see it less in more culturally separated gender groups where they don't where they maybe don't have the same access to the affordances that the other gender has. And maybe that the comedy itself is sort of a dipstick or a light or a canary, if you will, of the health of that situation and how it's evolving. Yeah. That's just my theory. And I think because we have watched, like right now is like a kind of a beautiful golden age of sort of our culture coming around to realizing that we've ignored half of the funny people. Yeah. You know, like I for the last 10 years, at least, the people that make me laugh the most on Saturday Night Live are, you know, the new female members, you know, and it doesn't even because they're genders, they're fucking funny. And
and they got a lot of new takes.
Yeah.
Because the male takes were so saturated.
Yeah, us three older white men are solving this problem. This is fantastic. But it's
now
true.
We're going in the other direction very quickly. Oh my God.
But I do think that you pointed out something really important is that like a lot of this, what we accept as regular knowledge, or even in sort of areas of that in the future won't be, because they're reflective of the sort of the environment something's situated in is part of what it is.
Yeah. So this is something they've studied, like implicit bias, for example. A lot of psychologists have commented on this. I'm not the first. Like I think Paul Bloom talks about this a lot in his book.
Oh, we got to try and get him on the show. I need
way
help.
better guest than me.
Not that. Oh, that Des? Holy shit!
No, than me. I said. Not that. I'm going to speak for someone way better than you. Way better than, like, okay. All right. Yeah. No. I consider myself a guest was the line of thinking there. Anyways,
you're the co-host.
I'm a co. Okay, yeah, because I haven't received checks, so I don't know what my check would be. I thought it was technical support, and
I've been spending
very,
the checks
very
on
good
this
at that.
place.
Yeah.
You're making more money than Pete because he's actually in the red because he's had to buy the equipment.
I have his mic over here. Actually.
He's not even using the stuff I got him. It's just sitting on the floor next to him.
It's actually correctly. It's right to my right over there. But
anyway, to your point.
To my point. Now I don't even remember what it was. Oh,
no,
God.
you talk about Paul Bloom. Paul Bloom.
Oh yes. So implicit bias. He commented on this, and then I looked into it. He was saying that they do these tests for bias, like basically evidence of like associations you've learned that affect your reaction time. Like you might be slower to verify something if it's against an association you've learned. Like if you learn group X, for example, is bad at math, and then you're doing this task, you might be slow to verify that group X is good at math or good at anything else, because you had an attitude you learned at some point that affects your reaction to other things in the future. And the argument is they found these biases originally, and they've been going down over time. So there's cultural shifts that may even be observable in psych. So the studies we found where these stark things like strong biases may still be there, but may go down. And I see that as a very positive story, because it means that when you get the word out, some things do change, which is nice, because so many things don't. But yeah, that's the case. I think it's a implicit association test. That's the case there?
Yeah, where you try to categorize words that are counterindicatory in sort of columns, and you move them to the left or the right, and how long it takes you to sort of override your.
I am always startled by your memory. It's so good.
Why are you startled by that? I'm not sitting here smoking a joint now. My memory is pretty good. But I was always fascinated by those as such. That's cognitive science specifically, because you're measuring a specific sort of factor in our processing time. So our processing time is the sort of the relevant control in those. And it's interesting because the racial ones are very distinct, like where you'd have to sort of describe groups, and like it's unbelievable, like that people that. But the thing I have the problem with this is that our implicit initial thing do get overridden somewhat by our rationality and our values, our morals, and our goals. And I always felt bad for the people that did have poor reaction time, because that's an influence of the culture they grew up in, and them fighting back against it is sort of a part of that as well.
Yeah, so this is a really important point you've just made. When you're looking at these weird, obscure things in a psychology study like reaction time, they don't necessarily reflect real-world behavior exactly for that reason. So we might be slow to react, but then the rationality kicks in. It's like, oh, that's a stupid thought to have. I shouldn't think that. I should do the mature thing. That's what being an adult is like, and you learn those things. So slow reaction time might reflect certain problematic information you receive. But the important thing at the end of the day would be that people take the right actions. And yeah, I agree with you. People shouldn't be demonized for something like this, or their stance on some other things too. But yeah. So associating that test with action has actually been a problem. So someone could have an extremely high reaction time or extremely high concerns of bias, but there's no guarantee they're going to be a nightmare person in real life, though sometimes they are, obviously. But that's a whole separate area, making that link.
I have a question based on my own confusion, so I assume some people that are listening will be confused. What are you speaking about when you say reaction?
I'm sorry, people.
No, it's both of you, actually, so don't feel bad. Okay. When you say reaction time, what are you talking about specifically?
So basically, do you want to try, Pete? I think you're our communicator.
I'm not. I don't. I've never. You've done actually formulated sort of probably experiences and stuff. So this is your domain. I'm not going to Jordan Peterson this moment.
As long as you do the voice, it's okay. Like if it's complete with a bad impression, like I've got one.
Let me tell you about what we're going to do here.
That's kind of Mickey. I feel like a Mickey Mouse person.
The reason why it's funny is the reason why it's funny is he is notorious for hating this test.
Really?
Oh, right.
Yeah. If you were to Google this now, and anyone out there listening, if you were to Google this now, So I think it has some value and it draws attention to something.
Does he hate
I'm always
reaction
cautious
time
about
test
overreach.
because it used to be a different gender and it changed itself to reaction?
Actually answer the question. Sorry.
Yes.
So this is the idea here. Reaction time is the amount of time it takes to respond to something. So reaction time. If I ask you a question, so do you really think people in this group are safer than people in that group? And you might answer that very quickly if you are a fan of one of those groups. You might be like, yeah, of course, because that would reflect your bias for them. Or you might be like, yes, and you might take a little longer. And the idea is that difference in reaction time reflects this battle with yourself, if you will, or your own thought processes to come to the right answer. And the idea is that only happens because of something you've learned before. Like maybe you're slow to say group X is good because when you're a kid, your mom said something about group X in the neighborhood and so on. It's that type of thing. The longer reaction times are suggestive of learned things and perhaps more difficult decisions.
Thank you for the clarification.
Next time I'll start with it. I'm so sorry.
No, it was one of these things where originally I thought I understood, but then as it went on, I realized, oh, this is kind of like specific to this test, so I just wanted to make sure I got it 100%.
Yeah, you have to sort of measure all your sort of experiments in one value, right? So the response time, like if you have to have some way of measuring your IV independent variable, which is what you're testing, right? So let's say they show the most common one I remember in psychology is where they'd show you a word on the screen, it'd flash on, and you'd have to click either left or right, good or bad, So let's say they show you a word good or bad, and it's like this. So people are thinking the judgment is what's being measured, the left or the right, but it's actually how long it takes you to hit the button, left or right.
Yeah, because people almost always make the nice judgment, but they take longer. Yeah, that's my impression too. Yeah.
So and then they make it more tricky. Like they'll put the context in a different word. Like the Stroop test is often done as a reaction time as well.
I figured out a great way to cheat on that.
Oh, the Stroop test is where they'll show you the name orange, and it'll be written in yellow. And then, so they'll go, we want you to say the color that we show you, not what it says. And so they do this. And that's actually how they used to find spies in World War II. They do them in German and then show the...
Where are you finding... This is amazing. Where are you finding this stuff? Like, in my undergrad psychology, I didn't learn about World War II spies. That's cool. This is good. Fountain of information.
And that was an anecdote by Dr. Vervecki in Cognitive Science.
Yeah, he's got some great stories too. Like he's like, let me tell you about these birds that and stuff like that. In his opening lecture, I'm like cognitive science involves pulling all these things together.
He made our entire class cry once. Like I'm talking like 300 students in the class, and
emotionally, not like out of fear.
We were bawling when he was describing the pain that people felt of a neural circuit trying to retest a common expected stimuli when somebody dies. And he goes, "Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?" And he kept doing it, and the whole fucking class was bawling their eyes out. And I was like, "Holy shit! I've never seen a professor do that."
Yeah, he I think he won like some award for being a life-changing lecturer. Like he connects with people, like really strong. If you were to hear him, if you haven't heard his stuff, you'd listen to it. It's like you get the appeal. You're along in the journey, and he can make you feel things like. Me, I approach lecturing in a different way. I'm closer to an encyclopedia than a person. But him, he actually feels almost at times like a one-act play as well as a lecture. Like it's a very different style.
Yeah, he's got a great YouTube channel, just an aside if anybody's interested, called the Meaning Crisis, I think it's called. Where he equates a lot of the problems and the pain we feel living in the modern world to the fact that we're having problems generating meaning everywhere. But anyways, that's a different show.
Wow, we love that.
I have to move this forward because we've only got like 15 more minutes that I've booked on this. And I really want to talk to Des about something that he's well known for. And I think that there's an interesting neuroscience similarity and insight to, because language acquisition. And you probably get bored. I bet everybody's sort of like asks you about languages constantly, Des. So I'm going to ask Dr. Whistle, how does Des do it? Why is Des so good?
Well, I have very specific circumstance, but let me hear. I have a specific circumstance, but let me
hear Des's explanation first, because I'm not sure I know how he specifically does it.
I'm going to Des.
It's not fair. It's not fair that he doesn't know how I specifically did it, and that for him to answer that question.
Okay, well,
I'm intrigued.
Nobody said this was the fair learner. It's the slow learner.
Well, no, but here's the thing, right? I had very specific situation. Right? So first of all, I was bad at languages in school. I did not thrive in the academic language learning environment. However, through no thought that I would be good at learning languages, I ended up doing two quite involved projects. The first one was learning the Irish language, the Gaelic or Gaelic, as they say in North America. But in that situation, and the second language which I learned, which was Mandarin, in the Irish situation, I lived in an Irish-speaking area for a full year and lived with a family. So a full 1 year of immersion. But more importantly, with the goal of, by the end of it, doing stand-up comedy in that language for people that speak that language. And also important to add, while being filmed and knowing that that result would be shown to the masses. So you're looking at a situation of perfect language learning environment, good amount of time, incredible motivation, and obviously great access to language learning materials. And then I did that again in China. I lived in Beijing. I ended up living there for 2 years, but the project was 1 year, stand-up comedy at the end of it, in Mandarin, lived with a family, total immersion. The Chinese immersion was actually a much deeper immersion than the Irish language situation because there is nobody left on the island of Ireland that only speaks Gaelic. That they all have fluency in both languages. All the people that have 100% fluency in Gaelic also have it in English, but not the other way around.
Right.
So that's how I learned.
So a real quick question on that. So you said you were immersed in it, but you also studied. So like what kind of studying are you talking about? Like, are you talking about like an 8-hour day of like hitting the books or like just listening to tapes? Or I'm really like, how did you study that?
Well, the Chinese example is better. So I enrolled in a full year learning Mandarin as a foreign language. You know, like so a class in Renmin University. It's a big Chinese university, but our course wasn't like officially like part of like a matriculated Renmin course. But a lot of the students there were kids that were doing like a semester or 2 semesters abroad. And were studying Mandarin in whatever university. I was there with some Canadian kids. I can't remember which university had the connection to Renmin, but they were all there as part of college courses, except for me. I was there in this. I was accepted, but I was the only person that was just there to learn Mandarin for my own unique purposes. But they allowed us to film and everything. But that was Monday to Friday, full classes for learning Mandarin and different level. You know, like I was put in a class of the level of because part of the journey was I had to wait because it was from 0 to stand up in a year.
So you didn't flip through a book of Mandarin before you got there? You started fresh.
I had been there twice and I had an interest in so I knew how to count to 10. I knew xie xie. I knew ni hao. And like I had been there before, so I knew that like do xiao qian was like how much. I knew like the very basics that you would have if you went to Spain for 2 weeks or something, you know, like I knew that, but
a lot of Mandarin in Spain,
no conversational ability. And so I did that. And then I got a tutor. So I had that, but then I had very stringent rules on myself. I watched no English language television for the entire year that I was in China, except for Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So when Breaking Bad, whatever season was on, 2013, when it came out, I watched that every Monday because it was actually on the Chinese internet, not illegally. It was actually the iQIYI, the Chinese internet company, had permission to show it on Monday. So I watched Breaking Bad in English. Everything else I watched in Mandarin, often with no English subtitles, just Mandarin subtitles. So I basically put myself in the ultimate language learning situation.
I just love that you're a little bit homesick, so you're like, I want to be reminded of where I came from. How about Breaking Bad?
How about a meth dealing chemistry teacher? But but that was my English language indulgence.
So did you go for like at the very beginning? Did you have stretches of time where you didn't speak English at all to anybody, like only in your head?
No, I mean because not everybody was as rigid at me in class, for example. So most of those kids were actually like between sort of like 19 and 22. So I was the guy that I hated when I was in college as a teenager, because I was the annoying mature student who was incredibly motivated and not distracted like they were. So they were all hanging out together all the time speaking English, but I didn't have a level of Mandarin to be able to communicate with them. So at times when they were talking to me about things, I would talk to them in English. So I couldn't create a 100% Mandarin speaking environment. Also, I couldn't do it,
Right.
So the family couldn't speak English though, so I had to find a way to communicate with them, which definitely helps you to learn faster.
That's really interesting. Like that there's a crucial need. Like, hey, where's the bathroom? Like,
Yes.
I need to, like, a survival. Like, I'm hungry. Those sorts of things kind of motivate you a little bit better than, hey, kind of like to sound cool.
And then my one other trick, the one other trick I'll say, and then I'll let you guys talk. My one other trick was I tried to create as many situations where I was seeing similar people a lot, because it gets very easy to have the introductory conversation. I'm from New York, but I live in Ireland. I'm 37 years old. So what I tried to do, so this sounds dirty,
brilliant.
but it's not. There was a massage place around the corner. It was not a hand job massage place. It was just a regular massage place. But I always get somehow, they numbered the girls. So I would always get number 3 every week. So I couldn't repeat my introductory story. So, and then she could also charter my improvement. So I kept going to her and tried to get better. So I was kind of using her as a tutor that also gave me a massage.
And just to validate what you're saying, massage is actually a much bigger part of the cultures in Asia as a part of a general health regimen.
Yes.
In Korea, when I was there, all the people that were blind from the war became massage people that gave massages. So they'd have these huge centers where you'd go where the blind would massage you. And like it's not erotic. It's just a make work and a health thing that everybody sort of subscribed to. But
yeah, it's always funny wherever you go in the world, there'll be some health practices that are just like foreign to you. Like Russians love saunas. I didn't know this.
Swedes too. Swedes and Finns.
It's like a thing. As like to get better from anything, it would be a sauna. But anyways, don't let me interrupt.
Oh no, I had one.
No, we need you to take it away now.
I know,
Okay.
but I have one other question for Des though too.
Okay.
From the start of when you were learning the language, you knew that the end goal was having to do a set in Chinese. So, were you keeping an eye the entire journey on things that you could work with? And did those change over the arc going, oh, that was a terrible idea. I thought that would make a good joke at the beginning. But as you learn more about the culture and the language and you got more integrated, you realized that did that change a lot with your acquisition of the language? Or did you stay static looking for similar sort of English, Western centric sort of ideas to make jokes on?
Well, I mean, initially, because the series had English language stand-up as part of its entertainment. So I was, from the get-go, thinking about those kind of fish out of water jokes that suited the story that we were trying to tell. But those were jokes for a Western audience. I'm basically trying to tell a modern story of China, an entertaining modern story of China, through this kind of hook of doing stand-up in their language, right? So that's like a fun way to talk about China. So I was always immediately thinking about jokes. I would say 20% of those English language fish out of water jokes directly translated then into Mandarin because it was very funny to them, right? But actually, I couldn't even really get too much into thinking about what would work in Mandarin until I understood the language. And then I just got lucky on that project. We had no idea that there was like an emerging Western style stand-up scene there, which they call tokosho. They alliterated talk show. They didn't alliterate stand-up comedy. So tokosho, which sounds like talk show, is actually stand-up comedy. When you say talk show, even in English to a Chinese speaker, if you said talk show, they would think you're talking about stand-up, right?
Is that what Daoshan does?
Dashan does, that's a whole other thing. Let's not get into that
No,
because
I won't.
that's
Just
just like separate podcast. But actually,
Right.
I just literally liked a video he did just the other day. For those that don't know, Toronto's most famous Mandarin speaker, incredible Mandarin speaker, and coincidentally enough, very helpful to me on this project. And
That's very nice.
He's in my series, and he's an amazing guy in so many ways. But no, what Talk Show is the Chinese language version of Western style stand up, like we know it, with an Asian hint, but it was just beginning when I was there. Like literally, I was on the ground in this emerging scene. So they adopted me very early because they could see that my language abilities were insufficient, but they could clearly see that my stagecraft was way advanced of anything that they were trying to do. So we had a real mutually beneficial relationship because I was just teaching them. Like just how to be better on stage, and they were basically helping me to understand not just the language. Because so the funny story about the first time I did stand up in Mandarin was I was just going to like this kind of like open mic night that was really more like a workshop. Everybody that was there was a stand up, but there was a decent group of about 20 of all these kids are just like they literally just found out what stand up is. It's not just that they're trying to try stand up for the first time; they're literally like just saw a video of Louis C.K. and are like, what's this, right? So I'm there at the literally the beginning is a Chinese stand-up, and there's like 20 of these kids in the room, and they're all trying stand-up. And then at the end, in their classic way, they were like, Bi Lao Shi, which translates as my Chinese last name and teacher, right? They're giving me this reverence, right? So they're cool. They're like, Des, teacher, will you please come up and try, right? So I had I had a vague idea that they might try to get me to say something. So I have these like 3 or 4 ideas in my mind of things I might try to do as jokes when I eventually get good enough in Mandarin. But I'm only like 6.5 months of learning Mandarin at this stage. So I get up on stage and I try to make people laugh. And I've been trying to make people laugh in Mandarin already, just like in conversation, just my natural personality. So afterwards, they were having a workshop, right? So afterwards, they discuss what went on. And they said, so you are on stage and you're so exciting. Your presence is so powerful. But we had no idea what you were trying to say because your tones are all wrong. So then I was going through some of the ideas with them, and they were like, oh, you were trying to say, you were trying to say xiao. You were saying xiao. And I'm like, oh. so the initial brick wall I came up against, which was basically just like trying to be comprehended, right? So actually, once I was able to tackle like a basic ability to get the audience to comprehend what I was trying to say, actually there wasn't as much of a difference as you would think to like jokes I was thinking about in English and jokes I was thinking about in Mandarin. The big difference was once I got the comprehension, I just had like a slightly deeper ability to talk about things that Chinese people would plug into, you know?
That's crazy because I remember seeing. Well, I was in Beijing when you were there, and I did that show with you at the library.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah, you were there. Yeah.
So I remember watching you on stage, and you just dropped into some Chinese, and that's the first time I'd ever seen you do that. And there was a subsection there, and you got big laughs, like huge laughs. And I was like, whoa. And I didn't realize, I didn't realize your Chinese was that good already, because I think that was like maybe 8 or 9 months in that you were there. But B, I didn't realize there was that many Chinese in the audience.
But even the white people there, a lot of them could speak Mandarin, just because that was like a community of people that might.
But it was just like, that's an incredible, because you're learning 2 languages. You're learning Chinese and you're learning the comedy of their culture. But that was easier than people think. So people always love talking about sense of humor and like the regionality of humor. I actually think that there's not as much of that as possible. It's just like what people are exposed to. And actually, Chinese people were very open to my sense of humor. So I didn't really need to change my humor at all. I just needed to find out how to say my humor in their language. And actually, I found that part a lot easier than I was expecting. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. It's just once I knew how to speak enough, they were very open to my type of, essentially my fish out of water anecdotes is what that they were responding to. Dr. Whistle, so he went through a complete immersion. He had to work really hard. He studied all the time. So why do we pick up language so easy as children, and then he has to put this much effort and this much immersion? And why do we struggle so much, and why is there so much variance between us when we do that?
Yeah, so a couple things to that point. Definitely seems to be the case that it's easier to learn as a kid. than as an adult. The reasons why are complex. So a neuroscientist would lean heavily on neuroscience to explain all this. I'll acknowledge those ideas first. Like the young brain is said to be very capable of change, what's called plastic. New pathways can grow, old pathways can be cut back, basically. A lot of the cells are still there. You haven't lost too many to alcohol or whatever it is you're doing. So younger brain really excels at change, and younger people quickly learn contingencies and other things as a result. So this is something that's coming out in various forms of research in neuroscience and psychology. That tends to go down with age. The best analogy I can give is like if you take a massive forest, it's easy to build a city on top of that. If you take a city, it's really hard to build anything new in part of it because it's already established, right? So it's like a lot of work. You got to move things around. There's not a lot of space. So that's the kind of situation you're dealing with. The adult brain is a little less capable. There's a little more things that are fixed. There's a little less raw materials, perhaps. But a neuroscientist would take that view and rant for like hours about it. And they're not wrong that it might matter. But the other piece, and this is what Des highlighted very well, is that the main reason people fail at learning a language when they're an adult is they try and do it in a different way than a kid learns. So a kid can only learn by immersion. A kid does not take classes. They're there where their parents are fighting, picking up swear words, that sort of thing. They learn by soaking it up. And it's a very different way. Like immersion is the only way. And they also have no crutch. There's no crutch. There's nothing they can rely on. There's no other language. Like if you want milk and your parents are English, you can't speak any other language and get milk. It's not likely to work out for you. So the context, immersion, which Des had, really helps. The motivation, which you also had, really, really helps in that if you remove the crutch, you're more likely to do it. There's also other things like contextual things or your end goal. So if your goal in speaking language is to communicate with your parents, very strong motivation, or an innovative idea for a special. But for some people, it's very different. It's like, it would feel good. Maybe this is the era that I learn. And if there's nothing at stake, I'm not surprised it fails. Like I've tried to learn languages so many times. You get Duolingo. Before that was it like Rosetta Stone, and I think there was one before that. But without those same stakes, without things like immersion, motivation, like you had there, I think it's likely to fail. So you have the two things, the neuroscience piece and the psych learning piece, that are key. And I will add, finally, there are some other X factors. I think people with more outgoing personalities, maybe certain personality traits, may pick up languages better if they're interacting with others a lot, stuff like that. And there are certain disorders where even if all the effort and will is there, it might be difficult, like autism spectrum disorders, and stuff. Language acquisition is a thing. That would be my speech there. Hopefully that will stuck.
That's really interesting. I have one question about temporal representation in the brain mapping. You know how that there's simple sort of locations that are sort of identified with living creatures or long-lasting human exposures over a period of our evolution, but sort of new things are sort of unpredictable in the way they're mapped temporally, or not temporally, but spatially in temporal context.
Nice, simple question.
Yeah, but I was just really curious, is if you switch between languages, when you learn a new language, is it located in the same place in the brain?
Yeah, this is something that's been commented on. They have this theory that if you learn a language later, it's stored differently. And many people who learn a language later in life still think in their original. This is like the big thing, right? Like you're effectively translating every time. Even if you're fluent, you're still translating. Like you have this original, foundation code and you put it into something else. I don't know if that was your experience.
But Des, did you start thinking in Chinese?
Yeah, it's hard to know how much you're thinking in Chinese. People always go like, "Are you dreaming?" People always have this thing about, "Are you dreaming?" That means you're fluent, which is actually not true, because I was dreaming in Mandarin and in Gaelic, like quite early. Just more to do with the fact that like you're like rote learning. Your brain is just full of information. So like you're sleeping at night, like your brain is still like running this stuff around in your head.
Yeah.
But I can give one example of how some of it must stick. Because still to this day, so I had this thing early on. When I was exercising, I would always count in Mandarin, because I was like, I will always count in Mandarin. Just one extra trick of not letting my brain go back into English mode. And still to this day, I don't even think about it. It's embarrassing sometimes if I have like a personal trainer. I don't even think about it. I always count in Mandarin. It's like, it's thoughtless. It's literally thoughtless.
Yeah.
So route things like that. Yeah, because I learned the Japanese numbers when I was doing all these years ago. This is dating myself, but I like many kids of my year learned karate when I was younger, and you learn the numbers when you're doing the moves or whatever. So I still count that way. Like if you're doing like a set, you count in Japanese. Everyone's like
each knee, some say.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the one.
I still do the sign of the cross in Latin. I can't not do it that way.
Wow.
In nomine Patria Filio Spiritus Sancti.
Yeah,
but then another one
that's deeply programmed is I don't think you ever get past it.
Another one that I got in the habit of, which got me in trouble once, is, there's some great Chinese curse words, and when I came back to the States, I basically, when I drive now, I always curse in Chinese because it's kind of safe, right? Because you're expressing your frustration, but you're not offending anybody. So I've really gotten in the habit of just like openly cursing in Chinese. So this is quite a while ago, but Flushing, Queens, which is the neighborhood that I actually grew up in New York, is like literally Chinatown now. It's a vast Chinatown, much bigger.
Where Henny is from or whatever?
She's from Flushing. Yeah,
really?
She's now the head of the Screen Actors Guild Union, Fran Drescher. But anyway, it's now totally Chinese. In fact, Bound Street, where she's from, is like literally you feel like you're in China. So anyway, I was in Flushing, and I was waiting to cross the street, and there was nearly a car accident. And I went, what's how? Which means like, oh, fuck, But I forgot that I was in Flushing, and this old Chinese woman turned around, like, disgusted at me. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Because you kind of forget. You have to be careful when you're in a Chinese-speaking area. It doesn't have you're not getting the benefit of cursing in Chinese to people that don't understand.
That's a great swear word, though. Can you say it one more time?
What's how? But that's hard to get right.
So there's a whole other area of research in psychology on how the sound of a word is in some way related to its emotional effects or maybe even its meaning, like harsh consonant sounds, and I think it's swear words. I can't remember exactly the result, but yeah. So if you hear a word and it sounds like, oh, that sounds scary, sometimes it is, like, strangely, yeah. But that language one, like speaking a language and you don't know anyone else knows it, I think, within our circle, we have a lot of people who immigrated here, and that happened like a bunch of times. And I remember there was this couple rudely talking. I think it was in front of a relative about her while she was there, assuming because she is in Canada, she doesn't know. And she waited for them to finish. She's like, "You really got to be careful," in their own language.
That's the best. That's the ultimate moment right there.
Just have that. Yeah, just like, yeah, there you go.
The ultimate.
Unfortunately, I got to wrap this up. I just a few little things. First of all, Des, I wish we had 2 hours to talk to you. You are, you have
thank you.
Such an incredible life in comedy. Comedy can be interesting unto itself. Like I think we can all agree it's not the most average sort of experience over a lifetime, but yours is imbued with even more complexities and adventure and choices that you've made to take chances and explore. And I mean, you're the only comic like what I was thinking. I first met you in Amsterdam, London.
No, I think I met Amsterdam came after my dad was nearly James Bond, and I particularly remember you being part of that experience.
So Edinburgh.
No, actually, I know when I met you first. I met you in Montreal. Andrew Maxwell introduced me to you. In fact, yes, our first meeting was we went to a strip club.
Well, it's a great origin story of friendship. Yeah.
There's a weird pride that Montreal has had, where I don't know if they currently do, but at that time that was like one of their selling points. Is
it used to be seen as a really fun place. Maybe it still is. Yeah. I'm not saying like it's stopped. I'm just disconnected. But it was also known for like deli or these salty.
Schwartz's.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, crazy.
Montreal's got so many sort of angles. But yeah, we first met there, and then your dad. Because I remember Arj and I went to see your show in Edinburgh, which was so touching and powerful, pathos, funny, mixed.
Next episode will be grief and comedy. We'll do that next time. Oh my God,
that'd be so good. But
next time.
And then in Amsterdam, we taped that show for Showtime that Russell Peters hosted.
Red Light Comedy.
Right. And what Hannibal, first time Bert Kreischer, Amy Schumer. God, there was all those people.
Wow.
It was an incredible. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a 2-night.
What happened to us?
Like I said, I found the picture the other day of us, and it's like, oh, what the hell? we put the work
You're
in.
doing great.
You got to send me that.
Yeah, it's not a bad pick.
Fantastic.
And yeah, of course, it's just been such a wonderful time. And thank you. You've also been an inspiration to me actually kind of going forward and doing this. And I wanted to thank you for that.
And it's definitely working out because Professor, myself and Pete chatted about this on a walk through a cemetery.
You did?
And
Okay,
he was very
scales.
still then. He didn't know, what it was going to be, how it was going to work. And I have to say, I think this is good. I really enjoyed it. And I was
too.
I was fascinated throughout the whole conversation, not just to be a part of it, but to listen. So congratulations.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Des.
I just want to echo everything Pete said. It's wonderful. We didn't get the chance the first time. We were sort of at the table. Everyone's tired. It's fantastic hearing your thoughts on things. That's a hell of an adventure learning 2 languages for specials. My God, that's crazy.
I also like the way that you've been able to sort of utilize this experience in this modern sort of social media sense too. Like, again, what a great sort of showcase of the diversity of cultural sort of experience, your storytelling about China. I think it brings people closer together. It's one of the good things about comedy that I like. Like there's good and bad, but there's some particularly good things is when comedy brings people together to share sort of a common quality like laughing. And I think with the divisions between sort of the cultures that are sort of exacerbated by politicization, I think what you're doing is freaking fantastic. And I really
Can I
like it.
say to any budding comics out there, as a parting note, there are easier ways to write jokes.
Funniest thing today. Let's see.
Yeah, if you're looking for easy, this guy right here. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on the Slow Learner. Des, you're fantastic. I'll do a little sort of thing at the end and mention where they can find your information because I don't have it with me, but we'll tack it on at the
No,
end.
don't worry about that.
And
I'm going to go pee.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Whistle, and thanks a lot, guys.
I'm gonna let it go, but I am gonna run and pee. I've been holding it for a while.
Go ahead. I'm going to press.